Right, welcome everybody coming on the screen. We're just getting our panelists loaded up. Nice, okay, I still don't see Anna in there. And I haven't heard from Ryan yet. Let me see, no emails. Okay. Do we see? Oh, there's Anna.
I got her.
All right, you got her? Awesome. There she is, yay. Yay! You made it.
Hey, Anna.
Oh, I can't.
Hi, Tu.
I know I see Chi in there. I see Sarah Meller. I see Khan.
Got a strong VFA representation tonight.
Yes.
Good to see you too, Tu.
Awesome. Can we hear you, Anna? Can you speak? Is it working? I can't hear. Is she muted? No.
Anna, try a different microphone selection under the mute option. That will arrow. See if you.
Oh.
Or not.
All right, no worries. Okay, there's Ryan Cleary. Okay, here he comes. Awesome. Yay. I guess while, and Ryan's here. Yay, hey Ryan. oh, it's muted.
Yeah, sorry guys. I think it's punting me over to the audience view rather than the panelists. I had a couple invites floating around, so.
Okay, sorry.
What's up, Ryan? Good to see you, man.
I know. How's it going? Are you in Dallas still, or did you end up back in San Antonio?
Actually in Boston right now visiting family, but Dallas is still home base.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're also on the fake Zoom backgrounds train there.
Oh, yeah. Definitely on the fake Zoom background train. Although it looks like you're not. That looks like a real FloatMe thing in the background, is it?
It is our new old office, I guess. We expanded, so now we have all of Active Capital's space recently. So I took that before I head back up to Cleveland to open our office up there. So
that's awesome.
Very convincing.
Yeah, high quality background.
Yeah, unfortunately, my window in my apartment right now casts the light, so it looks like it's actually coming in. So
yeah,
but all a good time. All a good time. Yeah, Sarah, are you in SADX right now, or out in the valley?
No, we're here. We're here in San Antonio.
Oh no, there's
out here.
Two Sarah problems.
Yeah, multiple Sarahs now.
Sorry. Can you hear us now, Anna? Is it working, the sound?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Beautiful. Love to see it.
Yay.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, I say we get started. You know, everyone the last few minutes to allow people in the Zoom now that we're used to it. But super excited to be here with everyone. I'm Anna Kirkwood, a current 2019 Venture for America Fellow. I serve as the Chief of Staff to the CEO and President of Knight Aerospace. I'm super excited and grateful to be here with three amazing VFA alum who have all had super diverse VFA experiences, but have all been very successful during the fellowship, post the fellowship, and I only see it continuing. With me tonight is Sarah, the current marketing manager at EarthClass Mail, who was a 2016 fellow, another 2016 fellow, Dimitri, who serves as the VP of Programs and Partnerships at CodeUp, and finally Ryan, who serves as a co-founder and current CEO of FloatMe. For those to give a little bit of context, VFA is a 2-year fellowship for recent college graduates who are passionate about building companies and entrepreneurship. The mission of VFA is to create economic economic opportunity in American cities by mobilizing the next generation of entrepreneurs and equipping them with the skill set and resources they need to create jobs. That was a mouthful, but I'm going to turn it. Thanks, Dimitri. I'm going to turn it over to the panelists to kind of introduce themselves. And the first question on my list is, what is your VFA fellow story? So, Dimitri, if you would like to start.
Oh man, I have to make up the fellow narrative. Okay, let's see. My fellow story. I was an urban studies major, and I had a background during college working in nonprofits and corporate social responsibility primarily. But also my parents were entrepreneurs, so I had these kind of two sides to myself, which led me having no idea what to do post grad. So as I was ramping up for my job search, I found VFA through a friend of mine and fell in love with the mission that Anna just outlined, the ability to have impact and mission-driven work, but within a for-profit environment, getting hands-on business operational experience in a small business, growing with a company. And from an urban studies perspective, the economic development, workforce development, and urban development potential of focusing talent and tech development and company development, ecosystem development in cities outside the traditional recruitment belt. So I found VFA, joined VFA, and then I found CodeUp within VFA, which felt like doubling down that mission even further. We're a career accelerator program at the time, just with software development. Currently, we have software development and data science. And so we help people launch careers in technology through an immersive training program with a 100% job refund guarantee. And so the whole mission is to help people transition to technology, land jobs, and sort of kickstart their careers, which to me was really a continuation of that mission of empowering a workforce, focusing on developing a local economy, tech ecosystem, without having it just be a bunch of software engineers transplanting from New York and San Francisco. And so sort of allowing access to technology careers and that economic prosperity and opportunity from within, from the local workforce, from that retooling of people who are already there. I thought that was really powerful. So I joined CodeUp and was I think the 10th employee. I was operations and admissions manager, so a little bit of everything, and then moved into a role to build out a data science program, and then moved into a role to lead program delivery, then moved to Dallas to launch our Dallas campus. And most recently, as of a couple of weeks, have been working to integrate the programs on the partnership side and having an end-to-end student experience from day one of the program all the way through day one of the job of like placement and program delivery and professional development. So that's my fellow journey. There's a brief side detour there into working with a local entrepreneur in San Antonio named Julia Bates on a company called Mellowbee, which was super fun. That was my foray into sort of individual entrepreneurship, but returned to CodeUp with focus and energy there. And so I'm guilty, no longer a San Antonio current fellow, but I owe San Antonio VFA my entire career trajectory. So, and I still work for CodeUp, which is HQ'd there. So I'll count it. Was that too long or too short? How was that, Anna?
That was perfect.
All right.
We'll still claim you as a San Antonio fellow.
Okay, cool.
Sarah, do you want to give your fellow experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, Sarah Cantu. I was also a 2016 fellow in Dimitri's class, and I still live in San Antonio, although right now I'm in McAllen, Texas, visiting family. And I first heard about VFA my sophomore year of college. I knew somebody who was applying to the program. He didn't actually end up doing the program, but I was kind of familiar with it from that point. And throughout college, I kind of did, a few different internships from bigger companies at like IBM to smaller sort of San Antonio startups because I went to college in San Antonio. So through that experience and some of my extracurricular activities, I kind of realized that I really enjoyed being on small teams and kind of getting to learn a lot and do a lot. And I always sort of had VFA in the back of my mind. So when I got to senior year, I applied and was accepted. And I started my fellowship working for a company that was based out of Charlotte. So I was working remote for them in San Antonio for a CodeUp competitor, actually. Fun times. and I was in that role for about 10 months, and then I switched over to ScaleWorks, which is where I still am. I've kind of moved throughout, which is a venture equity fund in San Antonio. So I've moved around a few of the portfolio companies since then in a variety of marketing roles, learned a lot, got to do a lot. And yeah, that's pretty much my VFA story, still at ScaleWorks and still in San Antonio. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And Ryan, to you, last but not least.
First off, great to see all the familiar faces here and some of the folks in the crowd, both current and upcoming fellows, guys. Really excited to be here tonight with y'all. Yeah, I'm Ryan Cleary, 2017 BFA fellow who is based in San Antonio. I kind of had a little bit of a less traditional BFA experience. I actually worked for the better part of 2 years before joining BFA. Actually spent some time working with incubators, started my own company. That was a fantastic failure, which was a big part of why I joined BFA. I had a friend who is a 16 fellow based in Cleveland, who really put me out to BFA, and I just fell in love with the concept of both, economic development, being from a city in the charmfully named Rust Belt region of the U.S. that really needs, needed a lot of folks like BFA in it, as well as just really loving the overall mission BFA has, both helping build up communities, but not really coming in and trying to, go in and just force them to fit this mold or template, but instead work with what's already being built there and provide people who are equally passionate about helping these companies solve problems and build something in that local community. So I ended up, going from, a couple of years post-grad and joining a company pretty much as early as you can. I was the first full-time employee at the company. It was the TLC Accelerator that was sort of a joint partnership between the Alamo Colleges District and the whole bunch of really fantastic business and community leaders. Always want to shout out USA, Geekdom, Frost Bank, and 80/20 for effectively being our earliest investors there, with really the mission of providing a accessible accelerator program designed for two-year community college students and the community at large, because largely startup accelerators and startup programs in general aren't designed for people from those kinds of backgrounds. They're really geared more towards the four-year college student community or folks who've already been in business for a long time. So we weren't just rewriting, building a company from the ground up. We were also rewriting the whole playbook. And that was a very eventful 2 years, to say the least. There were a lot of changes. Sarah Olivarez, who's moderating this wonderful event tonight, actually was part of our team here. She was employee number 3 as we kept on expanding out the staff. And so that alone was a really crazy, really exciting experience, and grew a lot from it, learned a ton of things, really just a trial by fire. But about 3 months in, I went to a startup weekend event and met my co-founders, Josh Sanchez, where we were just pitching at the startup weekend different ideas, and that eventually emerged into the company that I'm with today, FloatMe, which is based in San Antonio and also jointly based in Cleveland, Ohio, which is where, after 8 months of bouncing back and forth, I finally made the move too. But it's okay, San Antonio. I'm still back pretty often when it's safe to fly back and forth. But yeah, it was really incredible experience with the fellowship. Had a chance to learn a lot, and I think the biggest takeaway that I had from it was not just the experience you get career-wise and jobs-wise, but also just how incredible this community is of fellows and the folks who are around there supporting fellows, whether that be the company partners, that be the general community in San Antonio or any other city, who are willing to help support you along your career, whatever you're doing, whether that's building your own company or whether that's going and working for another one. And the other thing I always like to emphasize to people who are thinking about VFA or part of the VFA community is you don't have to be going into this to be a fellow founder, like what I ended up doing, or even what Dimitri did. We have 2 VFA fellows at our company right now where neither of them are super interested in building their own company, but they really want to be working on startups. They really want to be having a social impact that's not working at a nonprofit. So I always like to emphasize that too, and how varied the experience can be. It's really what you make of it. And what companies you end up with.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. And I think y'all touched on this a little bit, but if you could dive in a little deeper into what your organization does currently, and then what your specific role within your organization is. Dimitri, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah. So I alluded to this earlier. CodeUp is a currently 22-week career accelerator with programs in software development and data science and campuses San Antonio and Dallas. And we help people transition into careers in technology from pretty much any background. So we try to provide an alternative educational pathway into in-demand tech careers in a short, accelerated, intense, sort of straight to the point way by cutting away a lot of the valuable learning for overall growth and development, but learning that in traditional degrees isn't as targeted towards the employment outcome of something like software engineering. And our program is really focused on employment outcomes. We have a large placement team that sources job opportunities and does matchmaking with our graduates, a lot like VFA actually, in terms of the trying to find a fit, a little more proactive in the handheld matchmaking, but that same idea of two different groupings of employers and graduates. And my role at CodeUp is to lead the teams that are working with students from day one of the program through their job. So that consists of our in-program delivery staff, like instructors and student success coordinators and TAs, our professional development staff that work on career coaching for preparing students for their job search with resumes, LinkedIn profiles, interviewing, all their professional portfolio and materials. Business development on lead generation for employer partnerships and the actual placement of students themselves. So kind of that straight through once the marketing admissions team, which actually I think Sarah's on the call. Sarah Miller is our director of marketing and admissions. So shout out CodeUp being run by VFA fellows. And we have her bringing in all the students and then my team getting them through the program. So it's really focused on the integration of those different components. People who are a lot smarter and know software development and data science and are better at their jobs and job placement and recruitment and all the things do it. I just help align the pieces so it's like a smooth train from end to end is really my area of focus.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And Sarah, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I'm at EarthClass Mail, which is a company that digitizes postal mail so you can access it like email. And we primarily serve businesses, but also individuals. And I think it's important to note too that EarthClass Mail is part of the larger organization at ScaleWorks, which is a venture equity fund that purchases and invests in B2B SaaS companies. Yeah, so kind of a number of companies live under that umbrella. And my role specifically right now is content marketing manager. So I focus a lot of writing and editing, but essentially planning our blog and content calendar, sort of managing that process and doing some SEO or search engine optimization work to make sure that people can sort of find us online. And yeah, that is what I primarily focus on right now, but I do kind of a mix of marketing activities as well, like managing paid sponsorships and running our email program.
Awesome, thank you. And Ryan?
Yeah, so FloatMe was launched back in 2017 out of a Geekdom Startup weekend event. Really, we kind of spent about a year and a half flailing around trying to figure out what we were going to be when we grew up. We launched back in summer of 2019, and today we're currently a finance technology company that's directed directly to consumer, that's focused on empowering the low middle income employees to help them find a path to financial prosperity by offering democratized financial services that are designed for everyone. Currently, our main service offerings we're offering an alternative to payday loans and overdrafts by offering low cost, affordable wage advance programs, as well as on-made savings so our members can achieve financial stability. And in the future, we're moving towards credit building products, ancillary services, and also some affiliate partnerships as well. So we're really excited for what's going to be coming in 2021. And really just trying to make financial services accessible for everyone in a system that's built for really just the ultra wealthy as it stands today. So yeah, what do I do every day? Sometimes I'm trying to figure that out myself. It's an early stage company. We're really excited to finally have cracked 10 employees, but that still means that as COO, I kind of do a little bit of everything, except for putting fingers to code right now. Day to day, I'm answering support tickets. We're working with our team members who are focused on marketing. It can involve, working with the various independent contractors who we function with, various partners who help us with some of our tech services. Every day is an exciting adventure. Some days are just a little bit more exciting than others. Probably the most fun I have, though, is really working on some of our financial education resources. That's kind of just a personal passion area for me. And aside from that, I'm probably one of the few people in the world who actually loves reading through legal paperwork. So it works great when you're in financial services because there's a lot of that to go through, especially when you're working with big partners. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And then the last question before I dive into some more specific individual questions is, now that you all have completed your fellowship, what's one thing you know now but wish you knew back then when you had recently graduated college and were right before you started your fellowship? Ryan, do you want to kick us off?
Oh man, that is such a loaded question. I mean, first off, like there's so much to learn and so much to take away. However much you think in the startup space, like you don't know jack squat. You're gonna like just come away with adventure almost every day. I think one of the things that was most surprising to me was how little where you work matters relative to the team you're working with. Like when I was first looking at companies, the original TLC's original like founder Hatish, he and I both looked at each other's like profiles. VFA does this thing called match, which is sort of like a hiring process between the companies who are actually hiring the fellows and the people who, the fellows looking at the companies who are hiring. And both of us looked at each other's profiles and were like, there's no way like that this guy would be interested in like coming to San Antonio, building out this program. And I was like, oh, there's like no way that they're either way. And we met and just like immediately clicked as like two partners effectively starting up this startup to build startups. So I think like something like that just was surprising to me, and I really took away from it is just how much the people you work with and the team that you're working with matter almost more than what you're building. So that's like, I think been my biggest takeaway over the past 2 years. The only other one I would say, that's probably no one else that other folks will probably elaborate on here is, but just how incredible the VFA community is. There were some really, really rough patches around like 2018 that I'm not going to get into here, but like every member of the fellow community was extremely supportive when our company was going through some really stuff, when I was going through some really tough stuff, not just in San Antonio, but nationally. And that's one of the cool things about VFAs. You can go to any city in the US, almost any major city, and there will be fellows there, and you will hang out with them, because if they find out you're coming, they'll be like, what's going on? Like, let's meet up, let's grab coffee, let's grab drinks or something. And it's this very shared bond that is almost on par with, like, I think stronger than even like your college, community bond. So call it like shared adventure if you want.
Awesome, thank you. Dimitri, what is something you know now that you wish you knew then?
Okay, I guess I have to break this down into a couple categories to help organize my thoughts. So I'll give you quick answers in 3 areas. In VFA, it'll be hard and you'll have your ups and downs, and that's part of it. And it will be 100% worth it no matter what that experience is, because as Ryan said, that shared experience, that shared adventure is incredibly valuable for the formation of the social relationships I have with everybody, the company that I've worked with, the wins, the losses. It's the journey, right? Like it's really the journey there. And so whatever the VFA experience is for you, whether you're a current fellow or you're thinking about joining VFA, and I'd imagine this extrapolates to startups more generally, is it's going to be worth it, right? It's going to be worth it even when you're in those lows. The life thing I've learned is that nobody knows what they're doing. anywhere at any point in their life. And I kept waiting and thinking, okay, like now I've been doing this for 6 months, or I've been doing this for a year. Like, I think I finally have, a grip on it. And then something would happen. I'd be like, I have no idea what I'm doing, right? Something would come that I'm not prepared for, something that would come that would surprise me. So I say, take the pressure off of yourself to have it figured out and do your best, right? And roll with it. And if I had been able to adopt that mentality earlier in my career, I would have had a lot fewer sleepless, stressful nights. Not because I wouldn't have been stressed, but because I think I would have had a healthier relationship with myself as like a employee and individual, and just acknowledge that it doesn't happen. There's not a magical point where you turn 30 or 27 or 26 and you're just like, oh, I get it now. Yeah, I got it. And then the career advice, the career thing that I wish I think I've learned it through the last couple of years, but I would reiterate and pass more explicitly down to my younger self, is to do what scares you and lean into productive discomfort. Because the best growth and learning and excitement and adventure that I've had in my career has been from when somebody has said, hey, do you want to do this thing that we've never done before and that you don't know how to do? Like build a data science program, at which point I didn't know what data science was. So the prospect of building a 20-week program, and it was terrifying. And I had a blast doing it. I learned a ton. It led me to where I am today. So that would be my career. I wish I had known this earlier as a framework. So those are my three. Like nobody knows what they're doing. That journey will be worth it. And what was the last one I was saying? I saw a message pop up in the chat and I got distracted. Whatever that lean into productive discomfort and do what scares you. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Good recap too. Appreciate it. Sarah, what do you wish younger Sarah knew, or still young, or and fun?
Yeah. So actually, one of the things that I was going to comment on is really similar to what Dimitri just said about productive discomfort. I always think about this one time that I had a conversation with a coworker who was a runner. And I am not, and probably never will be, but I remember her saying, like, yeah, when I run, I hate it. Like, I just keep doing it anyway. And I was like, whoa, like, you can just keep doing something even if you don't feel like it, or kind of push through the pain, or push through the fear, right? Like the sort of like mental gymnastics, I think that takes, is something that we don't like talk about a lot. And I feel like that's something that I've kind of continually learned through VFA and sort of being on small teams, and like similarly just being faced with problems I don't know how to solve. Like, I can't even necessarily begin to think about how to solve them. So I think leaning into that and understanding that, there's not people that do big things or things that you find impressive aren't necessarily, it's not that they're not scared or that they're, it's not hard. They're pushing through that, right? They're experiencing that too. So I feel like that's a huge one, and something that I see a lot with like admiring like fellow founders and like the things that they accomplish. Like, they're having known some of those people now, I'm like, okay, it's not that you aren't scared. It's just that you do it anyway. So I think that's an important one. And then kind of a different but related one that I feel like I'm still learning at work is there's a Brene Brown quote, speaking through other people's words, but that says something like, I'm not here to be right. I'm here to get it right. So kind of that idea of like working on things without ego and trying to, not necessarily prioritizing being the person in the room who is right, but, trying to work together and collaboratively to achieve something, which is something I've found important in working for startups, and, being a part of a team is just not necessarily prioritizing that and trying to get it right with others. So those are the two things that come to mind.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I didn't say this at the beginning, but if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. And within like the last 10, 15 minutes, we'll ask all of the panelists, but please throw all your questions there. And so now to kind of get into some more individual questions, and panelists, if you want to answer somebody else's question, please feel free. But the first question is for Dimitri. I do see that we have a couple potential fellows who might be in the application process, but what's it like being on the other side of the table as a company partner hiring the next class of fellows?
Oh, it's so intimidating. Every time I interview a fellow, I'm like, I would not have gotten into VFA this year. So it's really a funny inversion. Going through the match process as a fellow is an experience of intimidation and fear and anxiety and stress and uncertainty for a lot of us. But in a funny way, it's the same thing on the other side of the table, where turns out it's, I would say, a lot harder to find the right people to join your team than it is to get a job, which I think I've heard other people say, but has proven true for me, especially with these like pain in the butt VFA fellows who have like 30 different awesome companies they're interviewing with, and you're trying to recruit them, and they have like started companies and launched nonprofits and traveled around the world, done all this cool stuff. So it's an interesting inversion of the expectation I would have had on sitting on the other side of the table. I would say on top of that, it's really gratifying. It's really empowering because it's such a powerful community of people with amazing, amazing backgrounds and passions. And the one sort of less shiny thing I would say is it's sometimes a pain because VFA fellows have really high expectations and they have really strong desires, and they also have a lot of uncertainty about what they're looking to get into. Because when I went through VFA, I had no idea what I was looking for. I was interviewing with hockey teams and food products and accelerators and nonprofits and everything. And so it's been challenging as a hiring manager to sometimes filter through and help a fellow find the right fit with us when they haven't quite figured it out for themselves. And that's the approach I've taken in interviewing VFA fellows from the other side of the table, is to assume anybody that gets in the VFA can do the job, pretty much any job. So I'm more looking for that fit and alignment, that they'll be happy in the team, like Ryan was talking about, the environment. And that's sometimes challenging. So my word of advice to sitting on the other side of the table would be, you don't have to have the perfect answer, but be open about what you're looking for. Don't be as concerned with sort of selling yourself and getting a job offer as you are finding the right fit, because you'll get that job offer when you find the right fit, and you can expedite the process for both yourself and the hiring manager if you are open about those sort of priorities and considerations and uncertainty, and lean into that and just be like, yeah, I'm figuring it out. And I think it's been more challenging when somebody is performing, and VFA fellows are good interviewers. So I've made an offer to a lot of VFA fellows, and then sometimes it's like, oh, this isn't the right fit. And then we discover that later on. So overall, fantastic. Like, I love interviewing VFA fellows. We have 5 fellows at CodeUp. We keep hiring on year after year. It's a long legacy. I'm proud to be having joined after Dylan McNally, a 2015er. And it is intimidating. And that's my one piece of advice, having switched from the other side of the table.
Awesome. Quick plug for Venture for America. The next deadline to submit an application is November 20th. And post that one, there's a second deadline of January 29th, I believe. So if you're interested, start preparing that application, ventureforamerica.org. Ryan, next question is for you. What are some of the common characteristics you see in successful companies and teams?
Oh, that's a really good one, Anna. Put me on the spot there. Yeah, I mean, so I think entrepreneurship kind of has a little bit of a myth, though, surrounded it, that like, go fast, break things, take huge risks, darn the consequences. And all the companies I've seen be most successful, both when I was in VFA, with FloatMe, and even before that, I was working with like incubators, was they de-risk early on. They try and de-risk as many small things that they can so that they can afford to take the big leaps. And those are really the companies I've seen be most successful, and the companies and teams that seem to work best together. An example I'll use is like, before anyone on our team took the leap, we spent like a year and a half interviewing people, trying out different things. We were originally going to be a business-to-business company, found out that that was like this really long, agonizing sales cycle, and instead found our niche working directly with consumers. All our team members took time to be able to go and just get to know each other really well, Like we didn't all just quit our day jobs. We went ahead and tried to build up a war chest to make it through some of the really lean times that we had early on. I think successful companies and teams, they don't stop doing that. They keep on doing that. They just like, you know, the types of risks that you're de-risking change a lot. So I think that's, you know, one thing is just as a company-wide culture is don't go for the person who's like trying to just aim big and not being thoughtful about it. Go with companies that are, you know, trying to minimize risks as much as possible so that they can afford to take the risks that count. As far as teams go, I'm a huge fan of a, you know, company that has a diverse team culture that they're willing and capable of having tough conversations about. Like diversity is a word that gets thrown around as a buzzword a lot with, especially in large corporations, but it doesn't really get acted on as much as it should, or maybe in the ways that it should. And this applies not just startups, but in general and teams in general. You want to be able to really be able to have those tough conversations with your teammates. And this is, you know, diversity of how you think about things, how you approach things, what background you came from, and how that may influence your thinking. And a team that can have that kind of tough conversation that maybe isn't very comfortable, I'll say, I think CodeUp has always struck me as a team that does that pretty well, at least all the team members I've spoken with there. Those are the teams that tend to be really successful because they're able to, you know one person's vision or one person's perspective or background is dominating the conversation. I think, you know, the other big thing that I've seen with teams that be really successful is they plan ahead. Like they, you know, they're not flying 100% by the seat of their pants. They've mapped out what happens if we effectively are close to running out of money. What happens, you know, if you have a pandemic happen. You know, we have a game plan in place for how we're going to keep our employees safe, how we're going to handle some of the challenges and risks that are going to rise. And maybe you didn't plan exactly for, you know, coronavirus coming, for example, but you at least had a plan in place if something happened, how you'd be able to adapt as a company. Those are kind of three big high-level takeaways. I think that, you know, the last one I'll say here is you have to like the people you work with. It all comes back to team for me. Who are the people you work with? Are you getting along with them? Are you able to have those hard conversations? And, you know, at the end of a, you know, really tough, you know, period together, are you able to leave all that at the door, go out and, you know, just grab coffee or something with them and have a good time together? Because at the end of the day, you might make a lot of money. You may end up being a flaming failure, but it's a really exciting journey no matter what.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And Sarah, your question, how have you been able to make an impact at each one of your roles? I think as I was preparing for the panel, you are 5+ since the start of your fellowship.
Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of those have definitely been partially a product of the environment, like small teams and moving quickly. So, and with being at ScaleWorks, I typically have been at ScaleWorks for 3 years, but just moved around the different portfolios. So that's part of the number. But I think making an impact, that's a good question. I feel like the attitude that I've taken is like, there's no job too small for one. So really kind of always being willing to sort of dig your heels in and figure out a way to make things work is something that I think has helped me make an impact in my various roles. Other things that come to mind are figuring out too how to solve problems and improve things for your team. I think as a marketer, a lot of times there's outputs that you are expected to execute on and to produce, like so many blog posts or X number of emails and things like that. But I feel like if you can be a team member who is noticing patterns, whether it's like operationally, like the way that a team works, or performance-wise, like the way that your marketing materials are performing, and trying to make recommendations about how to make that better, then that's one way to make an impact that I feel like I've adopted. Like I've always worked pretty closely with sales teams, so trying to understand how to make their work and lives easier has been a big part of, I think, being a successful marketer and a marketer that makes an impact. Yeah, so not just thinking, how do I do the thing, but how do I do it better next time? Or, you know, create a process so that whoever takes this role next can do it in an easier way. So documenting processes, solving problems. Yeah, those are the things that come to mind, in addition to just being able to dig your heels in and do whatever, whether it's, you know, folding a bunch of t-shirts for a conference, or, you know, like doing VLOOKUPs in Google Sheets, which are both real things that I've done in the last 3 years. So yeah, that's what comes to mind.
Awesome. And then final question for everyone before we get to the audience's questions. Kind of twofold. You can answer both or pick which one you'd like, but what's your favorite thing to do in San Antonio, and what are the strengths of the SA entrepreneurial ecosystem? Dimitri, do you want to start?
Pinch, Boil House, and Be a Bar. Shout out to the main man, Sean Wen, in the audience. Pinch is a fellow founded company inspired by Southeast Asian style street food. Started as a pop-up restaurant, turned brick and mortar with two brilliant young dudes at the head, Sean and Andrew. And I say that both because I like giving Sean a plug anytime I can, but also because I think it really embodies the environment. The thing that I love most about San Antonio is good food with good people and a beer. It's a city that, like, there's so much food with outdoor patio space, with string lights in the evening, and you grab some food, you grab some beers and hang out with people, and it's very relaxed and welcoming. And I think that is one of my favorite things to do in San Antonio, and Pinch is the best environment to do it, and get yourself a boil, have a grand evening. That was the first question. I think the second question was about strength of the ecosystem. Sorry, I just had Pinch pop in my head, like nothing else matters. Strength of the ecosystem, the honest, like, willingness and desire to support each other in a close-knit, like, know each other, be friends with each other, have relationships with each other environment. I don't think that there's any other environment I've been in or worked in where there is so much cross relationship, like, to a degree where sometimes it's like, wow, everybody knows everybody. Nothing can happen without everybody else sort of knowing each other. But I think that's really powerful to leverage, because people are always looking to help each other and make introductions. And in a company like CodeUp, which is very, very relationship oriented for its product and its experience, it's been hugely valuable for us as a business. And I think really key to our success in fostering our growth and wanting to see us win. And I think that is a philosophy that a lot of people in San Antonio carry forward in the tech ecosystem, of wanting to see each other win. So that is what I would say that is a unique thing about San Antonio, is instead of competitiveness, we want to see each other win. And the last plug I'd give is kind of what I talked about earlier. It's a city that wants to be building its ecosystem from within. I haven't seen as much desire to bring in multimillionaire investments from outside the city and, you know, transplant companies and individuals. I think it's a city that wants to invest in itself and grow. And I think the way that Graham Weston has done that with, you know, 80/20 and Weston Urban and Rackspace and Geekdom and all those components. Yeah, I think it's a city that's also really, really invested in itself and doesn't want to be taken over by somebody else.
So, Sarah, do you want to go next?
Yeah, favorite things to do in San Antonio. There's a few that come to mind. I think Dimitri kind of hit the nail on the head with good food and good people. As a fellow, like during my fellowship, one of my favorite things that we did as a class was like family dinners where we would cook for each other. So that was always great. I guess you could do that anywhere, but I associate it with the fellowship experience. I also love the San Antonio arts community and even nightlife community too, I would say. I think San Antonio has a very unique flavor of music and art that I really appreciate. And I think the city does a good job of making that accessible and free with like First Friday and things like that. I also just really love driving around the different San Antonio neighborhoods. Like, you know, I live in Monte Vista right now, so that's just, it's beautiful. Tobin Hill is great. Taking walks around King William, like that's what I think about too when I just think about San Antonio, is all the different neighborhoods to hang out in. And then as far as the ecosystem, I really have to echo what Dimitri said. I think the relational aspect is huge. And I feel like I've also never been in an environment too where people are so like, hey, I thought of you for this thing or this opportunity or to be on this event. It's just kind of constant, and it's great. I think it's really unique. And the way too, like, as you all can see in the comments, everybody talking about Pinch is also a very real thing downtown. Like, I think that the huge support for Pinch, like for supporting somebody that was part of the community starting a restaurant, is just awesome to see. That restaurant is always full. Yeah, so the community support I think is huge, and it definitely feels like you know, everything is growing, and there's so much too that either doesn't exist yet or like there could be more of. There's room for more of. So I think that's also something that's appealing about San Antonio.
Awesome, thank you. And Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, favorite things to do in San Antonio. I mean, no particular order. I'm a huge fan of the Blue Star Arts District and First Fridays. That's something that's very unique, I think, just around the U.S. Like, there's other communities I've been to that do similar-ish things, but I don't think anything that's quite that wide of a scale or consistency. You know, I'll be honest, I'm always a sucker for just going to the Pearl and dog watching. Yeah, I live vicariously through other people who own the dogs, since I just was always a little too busy to have one be left alone. One day we'll be stable enough for that, but not yet. And the last thing that I would just really love doing was going down, going for runs like on the Riverwalk. It really is like just gorgeous, you know, especially the Southern Reach. But yeah, I mean, San Antonio tech ecosystem or startup ecosystem in general, I think both Dimitri and Sarah both touched on this, but just how welcoming and supportive of the community it is. Like, having like spent time like with folks in New York and Chicago and Boston, you can't get the level of access there that you can in San Antonio. You can literally, if you are just like one or two connections away from someone like Graham Weston, for example. And places like, you know, DC, big, like really big cities, people like Graham Weston they're not going to spend time talking with you. Whereas here, like, they're willing to, and they're happy to. So that's like something crazy unique and crazy amazing about the tech community. And really San Antonio as a whole is everybody who's been successful, no matter how big of success or small localized success it is, they're willing to take time to engage with you, to pass on what they've learned, be pretty open about some of their mistakes along the way. And along with that, there's also very much, I think, a mentality of giving back to the community. That's, you know, I think 80/20 is a great example of that. Geekdom is a great example of that, of institutions that were started by people who were successful in San Antonio or the surrounding community, who wanted to not be the only ones who were successful and took the time and energy to help other people become successful. And that's really incredibly unique. And, you know, as Dimitri mentioned too, there's a lot of investment going, you know, back into San Antonio's local ecosystem. You know, San Antonio a couple of years ago was the #1 most economically segregated or economically disparate city in America. And the fact that there are people actively working to, you know, build, you know, whether that be, you know, coding boot camps, whether that be, you know, what TLC was doing, trying to provide access to groups of people who normally get overlooked by the startup ecosystem, whether it be, you know, reinvesting in things like COVID testing, you know, great schools that are meant to help, you know, educate people, like what, you know, Emerald Capital is doing, or, you know, the downtown tech schools, and just expand opportunity locally rather than just relying on outsiders to come in and, you know, like the Zuckerbergs, introduce something that isn't local, isn't really designed for the people here, and is just trying to make San Antonio fit this mold. I think it's great that we're being inspired by what's working outside, but applying it so that it works for us here. That's not just tech community, but community in general. I'm really excited that we've been able to hire a lot of people locally and haven't had to go out to, San Francisco or anything like that, because there's that level of commitment and great talent here.
Awesome, thank you. And then we have one audience question that I think is super relevant and important, and I know that all the panelists can relate to this. But so we have a recently admitted class of 2021 fellow. First of all, congratulations. But they want to know, how did you go into match? What did you go into match looking for? City, type of role, and how did those expectations change as you went through the process?
Wow.
I'll let whoever wants it, take it.
Yeah, so I went to match with the full intention that I was not going to go work for a BFA city that was in the South. It was not going to be a not-for-profit. It was going to be hardcore, super for-profit, and it was not going to be super early stage. And I basically ended up with all three of those things. I think that for me, it was really like just, it was coming in and actually like going and visiting the cities. I went to several different cities in the process. I almost ended up in Kansas City, actually, and then the company missed a funding round. And it really wasn't until I met, the team over at TLC and, actually visited San Antonio, which is a city that I frankly never would have visited otherwise in my life, probably. It just, I don't like hot weather. I had this vision of Texas being this very sandy place. I'm from like the Northeast, Midwest region. And I think like really what it caused me to do after experiencing that was just really like open my mind a bit as far as like, okay, like we can expand the horizons a bit and be really comfortable with ambiguity and lean into just a really new experience. And that's what I'd encourage people to do in match. Just don't like go in with any major like plans for where you want to be or you must go. Everybody in my year wanted to go to Denver. No longer an option, but like really what you're what I found that realized I really was looking for was a great team of people and an opportunity where I could learn a ton quickly and be responsible and take ownership of a lot of things quickly. And that helped me reframe exactly where I wanted to go and what sort of experience I wanted to have.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. Dimitri, Sarah, do you have anything to add about starting match and how that changed?
Yeah, I can chime in. I would say that I actually did approach match with a fairly open mind. I was pretty set on marketing roles, but other than that, I was open and I had what I thought might be an ideal type of company, which I did end up finding, and, sort of went from there. But I do feel like, VFA generally recommends to keep an open mind. And I really do think that is good advice. How did those expectations change? I mean, I think it's funny because I also sort of thought of VFA as like a good way to move to another place, but I ended up not moving and staying in San Antonio because that's where I found the right role for me. So I would say that, generally keeping an open mind is good, but overall, I think you'd be surprised too. It was a really cool visit to a cool experience to be able to visit and interview with other companies. So yeah, +1 for the open mind.
Awesome. Dimitri, do you want to give it a +2?
Yeah, TLDR edition, I think it's valuable to build a framework for yourself and evaluate what your priorities are in a hiring process, and then be ready to throw it out the window when you encounter something that challenges it. So I think the ambiguity, the uncertain, like openness is all really valuable. I also think it's valuable to put yourself through the exercise of asking yourself what you want. How do you compare and value relatively salary, location, role, company, industry, team size, state growth stage, bootstrap versus venture equity? Like there's a lot of different variables you can look at. Put together a rough draft, refine it through your interviews. Be comfortable throwing it out the window when your gut tells you to take something, and then follow that is kind of my best advice. Don't chase geography. Don't chase one thing. I tried to, and I think everybody I've ever talked to at VFA that did that 1 in 20 found the perfect fit ever, and 19 and 20 were like, yeah, I ended up changing it entirely. Maybe 1 in 50. I don't know. Like yeah, I don't think it's the right approach. And I think you can learn a lot about yourself through the interview process at VFA. So I would recommend iterating on that model and keeping it live in your mind so you can continue to learn what your priorities are when you actually put them to the test, looking at jobs and opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like a lot of advice that came out can be applied to post-match different scenarios. I'm going to land this plane though, sort of on time, but I want to give a huge shout out to Dimitri, Sarah, and Ryan for being on the panel this evening. I hope that everyone got to learn a little more about Venture for America. Love to see all the fellows in the attendee. Shout out Andre, Amy, Sean. We have a great San Antonio community here. I'm super happy to be a part of it. I know our panelists are too, whether or not they are physically here right now. But thank you to San Antonio Startup Week for allowing us to share a little bit. And thank you again to the panelists.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for having us and listening to us talk for an evening. It was fun, but I hope you had fun as well.
Same. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, y'all.